Elise sat alone in her childhood kitchen, the floorboards creaking with every winter gust that pushed against the walls. The house felt emptier than ever. Not just because her mother had been buried 2 days ago, but because everything left behind seemed to whisper with unanswered questions. She wrapped her fingers around the chipped handle of a mug filled with too strong coffee. Her eyes landed on the attic door, half open since the day she'd come back for the funeral. Her mother had become a quiet woman in her final years, living in solitude, disconnected from everything and everyone. The kind of grief Elise could never fully reach her through. Her father, Richard Bennett, had disappeared 26 years ago. No body, no note, just vanished. The last thing Elise remembered was waking up to her mother screaming his name. The sheriff said it was likely suicide. The town murmured about shame. Her mother never spoke of it again. After a long breath, Elise climbed the attic ladder for the third time that day. Not because she expected to find anything new, but because her gut wouldn't let her rest. The attic was cold. Dust hung in the air like old breath. She moved a few moldy boxes aside, nudging a stack of old books, when something slipped between the pages of a thick family Bible. It was a letter. The paper was yellowed and delicate, sealed with red wax, pressed with the old family crest she hadn't seen since childhood, 2 pine trees crossed by a lightning bolt. The envelope read, in handwriting she hadn't seen since she was 8, to Elise, "Only open if your mother is gone. Dad." Her breath caught. Her father had written this? Hands trembling, she broke the seal and unfolded the note. "Elise, if you're reading this, it means your mother's gone and I never came back. I am sorry for all of it. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I discovered something I was never meant to see. You remember the observatory job I took before everything went wrong? I found something out there, something that tied our family to things much older and much more dangerous than stars or storms. I was being watched. We all were. To keep you safe, I left. And I hid the truth where only you could find it. Go to cabin 12 at Dead Man's Hollow. Use the key in the Bible. Don't trust anyone unless they use the phrase, 'The pines remember.' Your answers are there. I love you, Dad." The letter slipped slightly from her hands. Her mind buzzed with confusion, fear, and the tiniest flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dead Man's Hollow was real. A disused hiking trail northwest of town, known mostly for bear sightings and being closed off after a series of landslides in the 90s. Elise hadn't thought about it in decades. She turned back to the Bible. Sure enough, tucked into a hollowed-out cut near the spine, was a brass key, tarnished but heavy in her hand. Her father's initials were engraved on its side. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she packed a small bag with a flashlight, gloves, extra socks, and the key. She left a note for her roommate back in Boston, explaining she'd be gone for a few days. She didn't say where. The next morning, she drove north, leaving behind paved roads and phone signal. She parked just off the old Forest Service road where the trail to Dead Man's Hollow once began. Trees towered above, silent and looming. The pine scent was thick, earthy, and strangely familiar. After nearly an hour of hiking through snow and ice, she saw it. Cabin 12. Its wood was weather-worn, the roof slightly caved on one end, but it stood, a relic among the trees. Her breath came in short, visible bursts as she stepped onto the porch. The key turned smoothly in the rusted lock. Inside, the cabin was eerily still. Cobwebs clung to the ceiling, but the hearth looked like it had been cleaned recently. In the center of the room was a table. On it sat a box, small, metal, and marked with the same crest from the letter. Before Elise could reach for it, the door creaked open behind her. A man's voice broke the silence. Weathered. Familiar. "Elise?" She turned, heart racing. There, standing in the doorway, bundled in a long winter coat, was a man with steel blue eyes she'd only seen in old photos and childhood dreams. Her voice broke. "Dad?" Elise's legs shook, planted in the worn threshold of cabin 12. The man before her was older, gray in his hair, softened in features, but those steel blue eyes were unmistakable. "Dad?" she whispered, voice cracking. Richard Bennett's gaze softened. He stepped inside, his coat heavy with pine scent. He closed the cabin door behind him, the latch clicking holes in the silence. "I didn't expect you," he said, voice low. He held one hand out, trembling. "You have every right to hate me." Elise swallowed hard. "You left. No word. Nothing." He nodded once. "I never stopped wanting to tell you why." She crossed her arms defensively. "Then do it." Richard hesitated. looking around the cabin at the dusty windows, the aged wood table, the metal box on it. He moved slowly to the box and set his hand atop it. This is where it begins, he said. Turning back to her, he continued, if that box is your key to answers, then you deserve them. But you need to understand I didn't leave you because I didn't love you. Elise's anger flickered. Then why? He breathed deeply. Because I was in too deep. In the observatory job, I found something in the patterns of the pines, in the seismic readings near the ridge that pointed to a network, a language of the earth itself. Elise's forehead creased. Earth's language? Her father nodded. There's a convergence point beneath the forest where water meets fault line. It's been active for centuries. I realized someone or something has been tapping into it. My research threatened people who believe it must stay hidden. She stepped closer. You mean the government? He shook his head. Not just them. Private interests. Researchers who believed the power of the pines could be weaponized. I refused. I walked away. But once they realized who I was, me lineage, they began to come after me. Elise stared at him, breath-catching. My lineage? Richard looked guilty. Your mother's family, before they came to Vermont, they were caretakers of this convergence point. They documented strange occurrences every generation. She left to shield you. And when I refused to hand over my findings, I became a threat too. Elise sank to the floor. All this. Because of me? He knelt beside her. Because of both of you. That's why I disappeared. To put distance between you and those who'd use you as leverage. The cabin door rattled. Wind moaned through the trees. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You deserve truth. And I'll give it. But slowly. Will you hear it? Her heart pounded. She nodded. He lifted the lid of the metal box. Inside lay a leather journal, a set of delicate leaf diagrams, and a device no bigger than a pocket dictionary but humming faintly, as if alive. He pulled out the journal. This is my research, my confession. Page 1, why I left. Page 2 and beyond, how we begin to protect what matters. Elise closed her eyes, fighting tears, fear, and something else. Relief that he was truly here. She opened her notebook. I'm ready. Elise sank into an old wooden chair as her father opened the leather-bound journal. Pine needles drifted on the floor's drafts, like faded memories of storms long ago. This journal, he began, his voice hoarse with emotion, is my log from when I started noticing patterns, weather anomalies, seismic pulses, even faint electromagnetic surges near the North Ridge. He flipped to the first page, a faded date, April 4, 1994, exactly 2 years before he disappeared. Elise leaned forward. What kind of surges? Her father touched the paper with reverence. Something alive, not living in the biological sense but aware, capable of communication, almost a consciousness rooted in the earth. She shivered. Like a spirit? He shook his head. Not exactly. More like a machine grown from geological forces. It responds to pressure, emotions, even human intention, if you know how to listen. Elise felt her pulse quicken. And you found it? He nodded. I built instruments to record the energy flows. I'll show you the schematics. He guided her through the drawings of copper coils, quartz crystals, and sensitive electrodes buried beneath tree roots. This device, he said, holding up the humming artifact, is an amplifier tuned to channel the energy pulses into signal you can measure. He tapped the device. It emitted a low thrum, like a heartbeat. Elise reached out, fingertips brushing the humming shell. Warmth traveled up her arm. Her eyes widened. She felt something, distant voices, a pulse. Her father watched her reaction, voice soft. It works faster than I expected, and that's why I had to leave. I saw what it could do, how people would use it. She swallowed. Who? He exhaled slowly. A network, scientists, financiers, even speculators. They want to harness this for profit, power, warfare. It started with funding offers, but turned to threats. Elise closed her eyes. That's why you vanished. Her voice cracked. To hide from them? He nodded. I left clues like your letter and this cabin hoping someone would come. But I never planned for you to follow. She blinked. So I'm here, and they're still out there. He put a hand on her shoulder. I think it's safe enough now. Things have cooled. But they're still watching. Her mind raced. What do we do? Her father hesitated. We protect this knowledge. We decide whether to destroy it or share it responsibly. Elise stood. She paced the cabin once, then stopped. We share it, but carefully, slowly. With people we trust. Maybe scientists we know. Her father nodded. Yes, we can't abandon it or bury it again. He handed her the journal. She opened pages filled with notes, line after line of analysis, equations, and witness testimony spine harvesters who claimed whispers, hikers who felt callings. As snow fell outside, Elise and her father worked through the night, copying notes, testing the device, planning safe storage, and mapping people they could trust. A retired professor, a wise forest ranger, her mom's old friend journalist. By dawn, the cabin smelled like fresh coffee and pine sap. The device hummed steadily, the pages were catalogued, and a plan was taking shape. They stepped outside, breath visible and slow. The sky was pale blue, promising a new day. Elise looked over the frozen lake. Together. Her father smiled, warm and tired. Together. A week later, Elise guided their rental car along a winding forest road. The journal entries had pointed to a man, Dr. Arthur Keeley, a retired geophysicist and once her mother's trusted advisor. His cabin was hidden deep in the pines near Lake Birch Hollow. She parked in a small clearing, boots crunching through pine needles dusted with late winter snow. The cabin's chimney curled thin smoke into pale blue sky. A stack of wood sat neatly by the door. Someone lived here. They knocked. After a moment, the door opened. Dr. Keeley's eyes widened when he saw Elise and her father together, two figures he thought lost to the world decades ago. Richard. Elise, he whispered, voice trembling, then steadied himself. I thought you'd vanished. Richard nodded. I'm here. With her. Keeley stepped aside. You both come in. It's good to see you. Inside, the cabin was warm and cluttered with scientific diagrams, coils of wire, and jars filled with smooth pine resin and mineral samples. A small amplifier whined softly in the corner. Dr. Keeley motioned them to a rough-hewn table. I got your message. Through Ellen, he said, glancing at Elise. Your mother. I knew she'd send someone she trusted. Elise offered a gentle nod. She believed we'd do the right thing. Keeley exhaled. We have much to talk about. Richard opened his journal and placed it on the table. Keeley ran a hand over the leather. You've made progress? Richard nodded. We unlocked the amplifier. I think the pines responded. Keeley's eyes glinted. We'll see soon. He stood and lifted a wooden box from the amplifier. Undid several screws. Elise leaned forward as Keeley placed a dozen small crystal shards atop a glass plate within the device. We're going to test it, he explained, to see if it picks up the ley line whispers energetic echoes through the crystals. A soft, rhythmic thrum began emanating from the device soon, followed by a quiet hiss, like distant voices caught in static. Elise's skin prickled. I hear it. Keeley smiled. Yes, the pines are talking back. They listened in silency a moment, suspended in time. Then, the amplifier's tone warped into something sharp like a scream from beneath the earth. Elise jumped. Is that normal? Keeley's face darkened. Usually it's gentler. That distortion means someone else has activated ley lines nearby. Richard frowned. Who? Keeley sighed, eyes dark. Not sure. But whoever it is secured access through the Department of Energy's recent grid upgrades in this region. They might already have a stronger amplifier, and they're not inviting us to the conversation. Elise's chest tightened. So they're listening too. Keeley nodded. More than listening, they might be leading the pines into other intentions. Outside, the wind stirred the pines hard. Branches scratched the windows like skeletal fingers. Richard reached for Elise's hand. We need them on our side, and we need to move faster. Keeley tapped the amplifier. Time to protect the pines, and ourselves. But first let's plan. They spent the next hour poring over maps, assigning tasks, speculating on threats. As dusk settled, the cabin's small lamp glowed around them, three silhouettes united by hope, fear, and the quiet power of the forest beyond. The evening settled into deep blue as the trio packed gear into Keeley's SUV, the amplifier, power packs, crystal modules, and their survival kits. They headed deeper into the forest, where cell signal faded, and night fell early between tree trunks. The chosen site was a clearing beside an ancient stone circle, moss-covered rocks arranged in a rough spiral, rumored to predate European settlers. Keeley parked, and the three unloaded gear. Snow mixed with pine needles under their boots, breaking the silence as they set a tripod for the amplifier. Keeley checked connections. This spot aligns with a second convergence node. If the pines speak anywhere, it's here. He stepped back. I'll calibrate. Elise stood close to her father, gripping a notebook. The amplifier lay quiet for a moment. Then Keely flipped a switch. A low hum began. They watched the device's meter tick, then soft static, shifting tones, almost like a voice. Quiet, indistinct. They leaned in. Elise whispered, "Daddy?" She felt her throat tighten. The tone changed, a ripple through the hum, like someone trying to speak through thick walls. Keely noted the shift. "We're hearing it." Richard closed his eyes. "It's calling, memories, emotions." Suddenly, a sharp spike in the readings. The amplifier buzzed louder. Keely stepped forward, cautious. "There, look!" On the spectral display flickered a pattern, a rhythmic pulse, not chaotic, deliberate, elongated shapes almost like Morse. Elise leaned close, tracing the shapes. "Is it language?" Keely shook his head. "No one's tuned for synthesis before. This is new." They recorded the reading. Then silence. The amplifier fell still. Before anyone could speak, something rustled in the trees beyond the circle. Leaves scraped. Branches shifted. A single headlamp blinked between trunks. Richard put a hand on Elise's shoulder. "Someone's here." Keely grabbed the amplifier. "We need to shut it down." They scrambled. Elise reached to cover the crystals. Keely powered down the unit. A distant voice called, "Dr. Keely? It's Agent Harris." Keely's face pallid. "Federal." A figure stepped into the clearing. Tall, dark coat, respirator hanging from his belt. He raised his hands. "We mean you no harm, but you need to come with us." Richard stepped forward. "Why?" "We're just recording data." Agent Harris scanned the device. "This is not just data. You're tapping into restricted geophysical signals. National security territory." Elise pressed her father's arm. "We only want to protect it." "Your protection could trigger a spike," he said, voice low. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Keely said, "We have recorded proof. We can work with you." Harris looked her in the eyes. "I've seen others far less cautious ignite systems that travel through the grid. We're here to prevent that." He took out a badge. "Department of Energy. Mr. Bennett, Miss Bennett, Dr. Keely, you're being invited to a briefing at the lab tomorrow." Elise's heart pounded. "You're detaining us?" Harris shook his head. "Not detaining. Escorting. By sunrise." Keely packed equipment slowly, hesitating. "The Pines speak sometimes." They just finished a message. Harris glanced at the letters flashing across the amplifier lights. "Interesting. You'll bring that too." They agreed warily. Harris set a GPS device on the ground. Leash. Night weighed heavy as they left the clearing under controlled pace, guided by federal agents. Keely looked back at the stone circle, cloaked in wind and mystery. Elise walked beside her father, whispering, "We're not alone anymore." Richard nodded grimly. "Number? And it's only just begun." Sunlight glinted off the government van as Elise, Richard, and Dr. Keely stepped inside the Department of Energy field lab. The interior was austere white walls, clipboards, and a single table where Agent Harris motioned them to sit. An array of monitors displayed visualizations, seismic waves, forest maps, amplified signals. Elise's heart pounded. "Thank you for coming," Harris began, tone polite but firm. "What you recorded in the field was highly irregular. A patterned geophysical signal, a living frequency." Keely nodded. "It's part of what we call the Pines' resonance." Richard stepped forward carefully. "Agree. I discovered correlations between that signal and memoria sensations near the old ridge." Harris tapped a display. "According to our data, that resonance matches energy signatures around Dead Man's Hollow recorded in classified observations since the 1970s. It's been contained, but your activation triggered a spike last night." Elise swallowed. "We meant no harm. We just wanted to understand." Harris looked at her. "Creation or control this power can be weaponized." Keely added, "We're proposing a research partnership. A controlled study, transparent, ethical. Graduate students, government oversight, Forest Service collaboration." Harris logged notes. "We already have a proposal pending, but the Pine Convergence Initiative PCI's divided. Some want this classified. Others see public benefit." Richard took a deep breath. "We're open to oversight, but we don't want it swept under cover." Harris nodded slowly. "Fair. But I need assurances and documentation." Elise cleared her throat. "I have my mother's research notes." She pulled a small journal from her mother, a botanist. had worked unofficially between 1990 and 1994, measuring plant mutations along the ridge. She believed the pines react to emotion and passed that belief to you. Harris studied the notes. These could reframe everything. Keely looked surprised. I didn't know she took field data. Richard exhaled. She did, quietly, to help me. Elise's voice softened. Mom wanted to protect us too. She tracked changes in moss, sap flow, tree resonance near emotional hotspots. Harris nodded. Then you've given us a foundation. He paused, looked at each of them. I'll take your notes under review. We'll begin with a small-scale controlled test there using radioactive-free tracer equipment. No spikes, no field exposure, Richard asked. How long? Depends on compliance. Weeks to months. Elise held her father's hand. We agree. Harris exhaled. Good. You'll be here. GPS tagged for now, but you're free to leave at will. They nodded. Harris stood. Welcome to the initiative. Let's discover what the pines area and who we become when we listen. The clinical room felt surreal bright white walls, cables snaking across the floor, and forest-themed wallpaper that oddly reminded Elise of the cabin. She and her father sat across from two scientists, Dr. Wells and Dr. Chang, alongside Dr. Keely, who monitored the device from a small console. Elise's heart fluttered as she gripped the amplifier's handheld Sensora palm-sized disc wired to her fingertip. It hummed quietly in her palm. Comfortable? Dr. Chang asked gently. She nodded, voice soft. Ready? Dr. Wells started the test. A low-frequency pulse began in the amplifier. They were recording her reaction, brain waves, skin conductance, all aimed at deciphering how the pine's energy interacted with human emotion. At first, all was still. Elise closed her eyes, thinking of snow falling in the forest behind her childhood home, of her mother's hand brushing her hair, of the ache of abandonment. The humming in her hand grew warm. She felt pressure in her chest. Then flash. A wave of sound, faint voices, laughter from childhood, her laughter. Her mother's soft, "It's okay," the crackle of a fire, pine needles underfoot. Her fingers tingled. The amplifier spiked the display, hunting above safe levels. Dr. Wells paused it. Readings high. Elisa swallowed, eyes open. I heard her. Dr. Chang gently removed the sensor. It's okay. We'll try again. Lower amplitude. Her father reached over and squeezed her hand. Are you all right? She nodded. Stronger than I expected. Keely adjusted levels. The pines amplify memory, especially those rooted in emotion. The test resumed but never reached clarity again. Instead, low hums, snippets laughing, don't cry overlapping. The scientists took notes, whispered to each other. They ended the session. Elise felt drained, exhilarated, and terrified. Outside the room, Lucas from PCI, a liaison, met them. We believe we've found something significant, but the compliance board requires a full emotional audit before field tests. Richard nodded, voice steady. Understood. Lucas paused. But there's something else. Another signal and register emanating from the forest near your cabin. Elise froze. Near cabin 12? Lucas nodded. Stronger than what you captured. We want to investigate. Elise and her father exchanged glances. Later, after they left the lab under dusk fog, the three walked in silence until they reached the parking area. Keely broke it, voice low. They're listening. Elise stared at the snowy pines across the field. So the pines have more to tell us. But we're not the only ones asking. Richard swiveled, face illuminated by street lamp. We have to go home. We have to find those signals. Keely nodded. To the cabin. The forest is speaking stronger tonight. They arrived at cabin 12 just as twilight settled over the forest. Snow crusted the path, and the air smelled of pine resin and damp earth. Richard carried a small generator, Elise cradled the amplifier, and Dr. Keely held a tablet flashing signal maps and graphs. Elise, here, Keely whispered, pointing out a faint red glow on the map near a cluster of ancient trees. That's the source, Elise whispered. That's stronger than anything we've recorded. Excitement mingled with trepidation in her voice. They worked quickly. Keely connected the amplifier to a new array of crystals, tuned deeper into the resonance. Richard set up thermal lamps to light the clearing, and Elise arranged sensor markers on the surrounding trees. Ready? Kale, Professor? Elise took a deep breath. Richard squeezed her hand. Let's listen. Keely flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing. thin, low vibrational pulse, weaving through the amplifier's coils. Soft, ancient, and unmistakably alive. Elise closed her eyes, feeling waves pass through her like ghostly fingertips. She heard a whisper too soft to understand as the frequency rose, more clarity. "Home, you found me." Her eyes snapped open. "Did you hear that?" Keely watched the display. "Yes, it's repeating." Inside the amplifier's hum, there was relief, gratitude, something like love. But as they listened, the wind shifted. Trees groaned. Snow rattled. A distant animal cry echoed. Richard switched off the amplifier. Silence crashed around them. Keely frowned. It responded. Emotion, recognition. Elise stepped forward. "Recognition?" Keely nodded. "Frequency matched your DNA pattern almost like the forest knew you." Elise's breath caught. "Knew me, not emotionally," Richard said, "but mentally, energetically." Keely touched Richard's arm. "But there's more, it's almost as if it's trying to communicate complaints or warnings." Elise exchanged a look with Keely. "Something's wrong," Keely remarked. "The signal contains two patterns, welcome and distress." A sudden snap behind them, branches breaking. They tensed. "Elise," Richard said softly. "Stay close." They turned, flashlights slicing through the dark. At the edge of the clearing stood a dark figure. "Drop the device," the voice commanded. Thick accent, calm menace. Keely stepped forward to protect the amplifier. Richard grabbed Elise's arm. "Number?" The figure raised a hand. Agent Harris emerged from the darkness, flashlight clipped to his coat. "I warned you," he said quietly. "Cut the signal or we intervene." Elise swallowed. "But it knows us, knows me." Harris nodded. "That's not by accident." Keely said, "We only want to protect it." Harris sighed. "Then trust us." The pines hummed between them, watching, waiting. They froze under the tall pines, the amplifier's red glow fading in their hands. Agent Harris's calm voice cut through the frosty silence. "Turn it off," he said firmly. Keely hesitated, then flipped the switch. Silence rushed back in. Snow sputtered down from branches overhead, settling like hush across the clearing. Elise's breath fogged in front of her. Her heart pounded. "How can you just stop?" she whispered to Harris. The agent's eyes softened. "Because you're dialing in something you can't control. It's reacting to you, but it's not yours to command." Richard stepped forward. "But it welcomed us. It recognized me." Harris nodded. "Our surveillance confirmed that. The forest responded, but at what cost?" Keely frowned. "What cost?" Harris exhaled. "Every time you dial it in, you signal your presence. Others track that. They know you're listening." Elise's chest tightened. "So when the forest screamed the other night, what was it?" Before anyone could answer, the ground below them trembled, a subtle pulse at first, then a deep rumble. Snow rattled the trees. The amplifier's screen flickered despite being off. Richard steadied Elise. "Harris, what's happening?" The agent's face hardened. "It's telling us. Warning us," Keely said. "It's not normal seismology. That's the pine's voice pulsing through the earth." Elise knelt, pressing a gloved hand to the snow. "It's saying something new." Branches overhead creaked and suddenly broke. A man fell into the clearing from above, landing at their feet, pale-faced, soaked, and frozen. Elise rushed to him. "Who are you?" he gasped out. "You don't understand, they're coming. They want the pines, hurry." Before she could question further, a second tremor split the ground, rippling outward like a shockwave. The amplifier sparked back to life, and the attached crystals glowed fiercely. Keely yelled, "We need to go now." They guarded the fallen man as Harris guided them back down the trail, generator and gear abandoned. Snow fell thick, and their footprints blurred in seconds. By the time they reached Harris's SUV, west winds battered the windshield as though scolding them for digging too deep. Inside, Elise's teeth chattered. The man sat shaking in the back seat. Harris started the engine. "We're hauling this intel in, we'll regroup at the lab." Richard clutched Elise's hand. "Did we just cause it?" Keely's voice was grim. "The pines aren't just sending words anymore, they're sending danger." The SUV's tires crunched over the forest road as they sped away from the crash site. Headlights cut through the snow-dusted pines. Inside, Elise sat between Drs. Keely and Richard, while Agent Harris drove with grim focus. In the back seat, the pale stranger hiker from the clearing shivered in silence. Elise wrapped a blanket around him. "What's your name?" she asked gently. He shook his head. His voice trembled as he finally whispered, "I'm Noah. I came up here on my own. Heard it calling me. Thought I could control it." Harris glanced back. So did others. Elise turned to her father. "Noah's just the most recent." Richard swallowed. The Pines chose who it spoke to, but people with ambition are hunting the current. Elise's heart pounded. "We have to stop them." Harris flicked on hazard lights. "We don't know who them are yet, but my team is mobilizing. This morning we'll find out who's been poking signals into protected spectrum." Elise closed her eyes. "If they break the spike threshold again, they'll trigger the convergence sand that could collapse the node. We could lose it forever." Keeley nodded. "And if it goes unstable, the tremor can spread. We're protecting far more than a mystery." The SUV slowed as they neared the field lab at Dead Man's Edge. Dawn's first light crept above the tree line. Harris pulled the vehicle into the secured compound. Inside, they were greeted by agents and scientists around a wall-sized screen showing maps, live seismic data, and live signal feeds. Harris pointed. "Look, someone else triggered activity at Site Bravo last night, precisely 15 minutes before your extraction." Elise leaned forward. "Who is Site Bravo?" Keeley shook his head. "A decommissioned logging camp. Not known for research, it's off-grid, but has solar and satellite uplink. They tapped sensors." Richard's jaw tightened. "They tried to co-opt the amplification node." Elise turned to Harris. "What about Noah? Is he safe here?" Harris nodded. "He's with an agent. Under watch. Questions first, action later." Noah avoided Elise's gaze, flinching every time between technocrats buzzing around. Elise closed her eyes. "We brought trouble." Richard placed a hand on her arm. "We brought opportunity. Now we protect it." Keeley joined them. "I'll gather my notes and Isaac's findings from old fieldwork. We need to prepare defenses, algorithms to detect unauthorized access." Elise swallowed hard. "Can we?" Keeley smiled weakly. "We have to." Harris cleared his throat. "The government will handle enforcement, but we choose how it evolves." Elise felt the weight of the Pines in her veins, their whispers, warnings, and prayers. She took a breath. "When do we begin?" Morning light filtered through the lab windows, illuminating the massive display wall. Elise stood beside Agent Harris, staring at the seismic spike from Site Bravo. Beneath it lay a pulsating red Dotan unauthorized signal approaching their coordinates. "Unknown device registered," Harris said. "We've deployed mobile teams, but if the operatives are here already, we need a stronger defense." Elise nodded. She and Keeley had spent last night coding signal filters and protective algorithms. They watched as lines of code scrolled across laptops, each line a digital barricade. Keeley explained. "Think firewall, but for the Pines. We detect intrusions in the energy spectrum and auto-damp harmful spikes." She tapped the screen. "That's new code from Mother's notes. Signature suppression. One algorithm protected emotional resonance, another shielded against external manipulation." Richard stepped into the scan zone, voice quiet. "This is more than technology. It's a vow." Just then, Harris's radio buzzed. "Bravo site confirmed. Team in place, awaiting go." Minutes passed like hours. The dot moved closer. Elise's pulse raced. Then, "Go," Harris whispered. Field team zipped out. Harris, Richard, Elise, and Keeley followed with laptops and sensors. They emerged at a ridge overlooking the frozen Site Bravo clearinga spread of solar arrays and an odd metal dome lodged between trees. Agents surrounded it, weapons low but ready. A convoy of suspects' black SUV shads sped off minutes before. The dome pulsed with energy. Dull thrum. Familiar. Elise shivered. "The Pike node is here?" Keeley fumbled with the laptop, glancing at Elise. "Algorithm stage 1. Engaged." On his screen, waveforms flickered, green lines suppressing red spikes. The dome's hum stuttered. From the ridge, Elise raised a hand. She stepped forward and spoke softly. "We're not attacking. We're protecting." The dome's pulse changed, slowed, softened, like a sigh. Harris's radio crackled. "Dome deactivated. No suspects on site. All gear secure. You did it." Elise exhaled. Keeley grinned. "Filters held just long enough to collapse external input." Richard wrapped his arm around her. "Our family's line protected its own roots." The clearing was silent. Snow whispered at their boots. Back at the lab, Harris addressed them. "Bravo node compromised, but we defended it without incident. We're expanding our network but discreetly." Elise checked her watch. "And what about the future?" Keeley closed the laptop. We scale regional guardians of the pines. Ethical, transparent. Richard added. And we teach. Use this for healing, not harm. Harris nodded. Sounds like a mission. Elise looked at them, father, mentor, age and tall aligned. Then let them come, she said softly. Months later, on a high ridge where the pines converged, a celebration was held by dawn. A small gathering. Scientists, agents, journalists, locals listening under the rising sun. Elise and Keeley presented findings. No manipulations, only resonantia, forgotten heartbeat of the earth, now protected. Richard stood beside them, tears in his eyes. He murmured to Elise, "We found them. You, me, mother's legacy, and we rose to guard it." Elise nodded. She looked at the forest, alive and breathing. The pines whispered around them, soft, ancient, triumphant. And above the ridge, the first faint aurora glimmered.